Hello and welcome to It's Not for Nothing, a podcast on untangling the mess of grief, faith, trauma, and hope after the death of a child. We are three Catholic mothers carrying the extraordinary cross of child loss. If you too are grieving a child, we want to provide a safe place for you to come just as you are, while sharing the encouragement that our God is on the move in the wasteland of your grief. You and your suffering are both precious to Him. It's not for nothing. We're so glad you're here. Hello and welcome back to It's Not for Nothing. I'm Elizabeth Leon, the Director of Family Support with Redbird Ministries, and we're here for episode 55, After the Rainbow, a conversation about loving your new baby while grieving another. I'm so honored to be here with friends and colleagues and new friends, these beautiful women that each have some experience with this topic in a very personal and intimate way. So we're joined by Brittany Primeaux. Many of you know Brittany from her time here with Redbird Ministries. We have Florencia Segura, Dr. Florencia Segura. You might recognize her from a recent webinar that we did on guilt and grief. And then Maria Fairbanks, also her first time here with Redbird. She's a mom that we've met with and worked with multiple different times. So welcome, ladies. I'm so glad to have you all for this conversation.
It's so exciting to be back. It's chaotic with summertime, but it's so very exciting. So happy to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you for welcoming me back on.
I know, and I miss seeing you, Brittany. Brittany has moved on from her work with Redbird. She still helps us out, as you can tell, but I just miss connecting with you more regularly. Florencia and Maria, welcome. How are you, ladies?
Well, I was telling my kids I get to be on my favorite podcast today. So I'm really honored and humbled, excited to be with you all. I can second what Brittany said. Summer's chaotic, but I'm also enjoying the slower pace. It's like loud and chaos, but a little bit less busy in a way. So we've been having good times at the pool, and I'm enjoying seeing the big kids play with our new baby and everybody fighting and interacting and working out their new dynamics. So it's been a blessing. Happy to be here.
Wonderful.
And I'm also so honored to be here. I love this podcast and the ministry that Redbird Ministry is doing. And same new routines. We just got back from vacation. So this is kind of our actual first week home, and a really welcome the slower pace, but just like Maria said, just a lot more noise, which is beautiful, especially, as we delve into our topic of loss. Noise for us is good.
Well, we wanted to have this conversation because there are so many feelings associated with having another baby after you've lost a child. And it doesn't have to be a baby that you've lost, but this rainbow baby experience is very complicated. And I want to root our conversation today in the scripture from Ecclesiastes 3:15. What now is has already been, but what is to be already is. God retrieves what has gone by. And I just thought this was such an interesting, mysterious, complex passage. I don't think I'd ever read it before, but it just struck me as being so appropriate for this topic, which is so entangled in the what is and what isn't and what was, and the mystery of living in this terrain and the reality of everything about our lives being held in God's providence. And we want to define a rainbow baby. Maybe this is a new term for you, but a rainbow baby is a baby that's born after the loss of another child in your family. And this episode is going to sit right in that tension that a rainbow baby does not replace the child that died. It doesn't erase their life. It doesn't fix anything about them being gone. Nothing about having another child after loss takes away the grief from that child that died. But that is not commonly understood and can be a very complicated experience for the family, especially the mother and the father. So I wonder if each of you could say a little bit about your experience with rainbow babies.
I felt that it was kind of my ticket back into the land of the living, which might sound terrible. I don't mean we were using her to fit in with normal people again, but that I felt maybe people were more comfortable around me in a way, because after their loss, people kind of see you and associate you with death, and they're remembering that awkwardness. So I noticed with some of my friends, they felt a little bit more comfortable, phew, your grief is over. Now we can be normal again. And I was thinking of that Psalm, I think Psalm 88, in the early grief, which I still feel I'm in early grief in a way. that you're like set apart with the dead. I felt that very much in like the first 2 years. Now it's been 2.5 years. We're settling in with our new rainbow baby, and I feel there has been some healing. I'm still in the thick of it, but she's brought so much new joy. There's still that pain and that grief, but that we can see like, okay, life can be good again. And like God is so faithful. It just gives you a glimpse of like, there are good gifts to come in our family, which was so hard to see in like the early, darker days.
Maria, can you tell us about your two girls, your girl that you lost,
Yes.
and your girl that came
So,
after?
our daughter, Mary Gabriel, she would be 2.5, similar to Elizabeth's son. So she had trisomy 13, which we knew during the pregnancy. We were very blessed. We made it full term, and it was a miracle. We had 2 hours with her after birth. So it was like the happiest and saddest day of all time. We miss her dearly. It was difficult, obviously, but our new baby, her name is Elizabeth Maria. So Mary Gabriel we named after the Annunciation, and Ellie is after the Visitation. We were going for like Mary and Elizabeth as like a little nod to her in heaven. So it was so healing that it was a girl. It doesn't replace her in any way, but it was so special to get a glimpse of what it was like for our living daughter to have a sister on earth, and to imagine how it would have been and give her extra kisses for our daughter in heaven. It's a messy process, but we're navigating through it, and she's bringing a lot of joy to our family through everything.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. We lost our son, Leo, on December 4th to SIDS. And then on January 4th, we found out that we were pregnant with our daughter, Annie. Leo was also a rainbow baby because I had had a second trimester miscarriage at home. So he was one that we unfortunately lost. Then we had Annie, and Annie was born on National Rainbow Baby Day, which I didn't even know was a thing. It was August 22nd. And one of the nurses pointed that out. And then another very sweet nurse walked in and asked if I cared about horoscopes. And I just thought that that was the most random question. And I was like, I don't think I do. But what you got, you know? And she was like, well, I just wanted you to know she's a Leo baby. So, like, her horoscope, like, that's the final day. So, being born on National Rainbow Day, but it was also, that was the final day for her horoscope to be a Leo. And it was just like so much, you know, that I was like, okay, God, okay, I feel it. I know you're here. I know he's here. Like, I know it'll be okay. But it's exactly what you just shared, Maria. Like, it is extraordinarily hard. And I feel like I felt it much more so with experiencing the pregnancy with Annie. As far as her being our rainbow baby, Leo, I had like some things, but the emotions were just very different with Annie having lost Leo to SIDS. I realized, in fact, the night before we found out we were pregnant, so January 3rd, I had had a debilitating anxiety attack because I couldn't go anywhere in my house to grieve. We have a smaller home, and I didn't want to upset my husband. I didn't want to upset our living children, and I just felt like I couldn't go anywhere, and just had a full-blown anxiety attack. And then finding out we were pregnant the next day made me realize I had to encounter my grief, and I couldn't push it away, and I couldn't, you know, like stifle. I couldn't do anything. I just had to experience it, and whatever that meant in that moment, because I didn't want it to impact her, you know.
Florencia, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, thank you. Hearing all of your stories, I think every loss is so unique, but there's so many similarities to all of our losses. And Maria, you saying your rainbow baby felt like the ticket to the living. I 100% agree with that. I felt like with Lucy, people started to treat me a little bit more like less somberly, if that makes sense. Like they could joke with me. Like I felt normal again to them, even though inside, like I will never be the pre Florencia I was before Rosie passed. But Rosie was our third child and will always be our third child. And she was this vibrant, like beautiful little blue-eyed girl with this curly, dark brown hair. She passed on May 21st, 2024 in her sleep from something called SUDC. They also known as SIDC. We categorize it sort of like after SIDS. So it's loss after 1 year, and it's typically during sleep at night. Just the whole thing was just so hard. I mean, as you guys know, it's hard to really quantify in terms of like the words, like how difficult that whole experience was. And then also being a pediatrician, having lots of my family members having all of these babies. Like I had a nephew that was, I think, 4 weeks old. I had a niece and a nephew that were literally Rosie's age by a couple of months. And we called them like the little trio. And I just felt like it was this nightmare that I would wake up to, and it wasn't really happening. But, and we can probably touch upon this a little bit later, we were a couple months in, we were kind of open. We were very deep in our grief, but we were very new. We didn't have all the time in the world because we were in our late 30s, and my husband and I, and we were kind of like, well, let's just sort of see what happens. And see what happens was, I felt like a baby right away, which we weren't expecting that. So it was a huge surprise, a beautiful surprise, but we were still very much in this deep grief. And how do you tell people when they're seeing you for the first time and they're saying, I'm so sorry for your loss, and then you're also pregnant? It just felt like this really dark storm with the rainbow, not like a beautiful day with a rainbow. It just felt like these two extremes that we were living through.
Yeah, I mean, that's so well articulated of the experience of being in the depths, and your comment of being open to life. And I was actually thinking about that question, thinking I didn't prep you all to talk about whether like you meant to get pregnant or not, but it's such a delicate ground. And can I open myself to life? I know, Brittany, you didn't even know you were pregnant when Leo died. And Florencia, to have the courage, frankly, the courage to surrender in that way to just what the Lord might bring. I mean, there's so much fear. There's so much, I mean, there's fear during pregnancy in general, I think, but when you know loss, it's just so, it's so fragile. It's so fragile at best. I mean, terrifying at worst and fragile at best. So how did you all manage that fear? What was your experience with living with that day in and day out with another pregnancy?
I think it's important to affirm what you're saying, to really like affirm that it is such a reckless act of love on behalf of the parents to open yourself to having a new child, because you know full well the risk that it carries. Like, of course, we can all say, if we're open to life, we're open to death. But if you haven't experienced it, you don't know what that really means. When you've experienced it, it's to a different level. The fear. So I think it's so brave of families to continue to be open and love a new baby without knowing if they will come home. And I felt that was on my heart when I was carrying Ellie at the beginning, was kind of the name of this podcast. It's not for nothing. That Jesus was showing me, like, whether this baby lives or dies, it's never a waste. Like, bringing an eternal soul into the world is so beautiful, such a gift. If she ended up being with Jesus, that would be a huge gift to him and for me when I hopefully joined her. So to see it from that perspective, that of course we would never want to lose again, but that it's never wasted. A child is always a gift, and God can't be outdone in generosity. But practically, I feel like I had some little things I would coach myself. I feel like I had to be disciplined in my thought life. Like, before my appointments, my brain would easily spin out about all the different things that I would tell myself, like, it's not healthy for me or my baby to be stressed and worrying. Like, the one thing I can control in this moment is like trying to rest. That's good for me and my baby. And worrying gives us like this false sense of control, but it won't affect the outcome. It won't change anything at the appointment the next day. So I'd have to just explicitly tell myself that. And I would just tell myself, if I have no evidence that anything is wrong, I'm going to assume everything is right. If we find out at the appointment something's wrong, like, I will have the grace in that moment to deal with it, and God will meet me there. I'd also just tell myself most babies are born healthy and live a long time. Now that I'm in the loss community, I feel like I've had my own loss, so I have that trauma and hypervigilance, but I also know so many heartbreaking stories, so my brain skews to like leaning that way. But in reality, most babies do come home. And like, I'm blessed that I'd had 3 healthy kids before our loss, so I knew it was possible. But I felt very much that Jesus told me just to trust and rest during that pregnancy, which was much easier said than done. But I really cling to that. I was like, Jesus, I trust in you. I don't feel it, but faith isn't about feelings. I'm just going to like take you at your word. And I know that you're good. This doesn't feel good, but one moment at a time, jump over this appointment, go to the next one, and not look too far ahead. And he definitely gave a ton of grace.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So healthy and so mature. I'm thinking, I don't know that I have that much control over my emotions. That's really so faith-filled, Maria.
Absolutely. I'm slightly more emotional. Raise your hand if you're surprised. No, I am though. Like I very much, that is unfortunately, fortunately, depending on who you ask, just my personality. I'm much more emotionally driven. And so with the losses and having the loss of our son Leo so fast, finding out we're pregnant with Annie, not really having a lot of like mental space to grieve one and prepare for the other, you know, and all of that was just really hard. But my big tormentor was there's not going to be a heartbeat like ahead of every single appointment, and it would start just a few days. Like I would be fine for days, and then the week of the appointment it would start, you know, and it was just this like literal pulsating feeling and emotion and thoughts. And I had to kind of, the same way that you were saying, Maria, almost develop like a mantra. And I would say it out loud. If I'm in the middle of a grocery store, if I'm in my car, like wherever I am, I say it out loud. And that kind of helped to quiet the thoughts. And for me, it was fear is not of God. And like I would just hurry up and say it, and then it would kind of just release the things that I was thinking, and then maybe a few minutes later it would come back and I would have to say it again, you know, or maybe it was enough time. But another one that I would call on, and I feel like it was what you were saying as well, Maria, is to like making myself only think of what is real and what is true. Don't go to the what if place. Don't go to a place of what would I do if, no. Like, where is God present here in truth, in reality? What do we know to be real and true? And I always noticed for all of the things, y'all, like ahead of Leo's anniversaries, ahead of appointments with babies, in all of it, you know, just in the grief realm, if my spirit felt like it wasn't at rest, it was because I was in one of those places. I was thinking about things that weren't true. I was thinking about things that weren't real. And for me, that's where so much, maybe not joy, but comfort and peace can absolutely be found.
Amen. I think we exit his presence when we enter into the realm of anxiety. And I don't want to make it sound like I had this down. It was a very messy, daily, moment by moment process. Like he doesn't promise us a life free of suffering, but he does guarantee his presence. And that's enough if we cling to it. And I can really relate to what you're saying, Brittany.
I mean, I completely agree with Maria, Brittany, everything you've said. And I remember Maria and I have become very close just with our losses and our babies. But, you know, it's one of these really hard things that we put ourselves in this situation that almost broke us, you know, like just this openness to life. I mean, and I really felt like I knew that I would not be able to go back probably for a very long time to my job if it weren't for having another baby. It just like I couldn't see my nieces and nephews. It just became very clear that that was where I felt like Rosie and God were like this, like just be open to this, because like not that Lucy, our rainbow baby, was going to heal us, but that she was going to help me get back to what I loved doing the most, which is being a mom and being a pediatrician. But in terms of like just the everyday, because we've kind of like that pregnancy was really hard. And then also just that first year of like, even now, really, I mean, sleep is just a very big trigger for me, but it's just surrender for me was just sort of like, I had no power over this death, like Rosie's death. And so I can't keep this baby alive. It's God's will. And then just doing what I knew to be that I could do in terms of like sleeping well, as much as you can, you know, eating healthy food, going to my appointments. And I agree. I think it's now that I'm on the other side of it, it's easier to kind of go back and go through that. But I mean, every time they would put the ultrasound probe and see if there was a heart rate, and like I wouldn't see it immediately, my heart would just start beating really fast and my brain would start spinning and I'd have to really kind of ground myself in prayer. But that's sort of a little bit of our experience.
Well, and it's interesting because I think, we're naming this spiritual reality that each one of us has grappled with, like the forced surrender, to be fair. Like we didn't ask to learn this surrender, we were thrust into it. And then a level of faith and trust that grows from that, and even hope with these beautiful new children. And so, on the one side, that should make our life experience be actually more free. And in many ways, I have felt that in my life, that the bursting of this bubble and the Lord saving us, pulling us, holding us, loving us in the worst thing that could happen, finding God there is very freeing, because we know if, God forbid, it happened again, the Lord would meet us right there. So on the one hand, in a spiritual way, it feels like it should be very uplifting, sort of. And on the other hand, like the earthly human experience is, we can't pretend that terrible things can't happen anymore. I mean, all three of you lost children after birth. We have so many families that have lost children in a variety of horrific, terrible ways. So it's that reality. I think you just said it, Florence, like we can't keep our living children alive. We can protect them, but only God can keep them alive. And that is a hard reality to learn to live in.
It is, but what I find so interesting, and I don't know if this will resonate with anybody else, but it definitely occurred with me. So before I was actually like an official mommy, my sister's in the military, my godchild, I became the domiciliary of, she's this precious little baby, and I always, always, always said, if something happened to Aiden, you will find me in a straitjacket. Like, I will lose my mind. There's no question. And it was just so interesting, that once again, we dealt with, a really terrible miscarriage. Then we dealt with the loss of Leo. And it was just all of those moments, like God showing up saying, you're not in control. And you're also not going crazy. And there was one time recently, I brought it to confession because it's still something that I'm so hyper aware of. And I think it was maybe because Leo passed away not in my care, and his precious babysitter could not have done anything differently. Like all the true things, right? Is what I try to remember. But in confession, I brought it up that I just feel like I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to feel like it's solely up to me that I am keeping them alive. I'm tired. It's so much mental space. It's so much fear of dropping them off at school every day, begging Jesus, please let me pick them up. Please don't let anything happen to them when they're not with me. And I brought it to our friend and parish priest, Father Chester, and in confessional, I don't know if I'm supposed to share this. He can't share it. I can share it. In confessional, like I'm sobbing, and I just open my eyes and he's looking at me smiling, and he goes, Brittany, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. God wants you exactly how he has formed you. He just wants you to invite him in. He wants to help you keep them alive, and it's exactly that, where I did feel like it was only up to me. I was just like completely discrediting God from having a role in it. And it's been so remarkable because truly, like, still the moments that are really hard, and, for all of our listeners, it's 9 years out and I still feel the same way. And when my kids aren't with me, like, it's just really, really hard. And I carry it in my body, and it feels heavy, and I tense up, and I get terrible migraines and all of the things. But now I truly have started saying, like, Jesus, you love them more than I do. I trust you. And I mean it. Please take care of them. And I kind of just release that. And it really is such a remarkable feeling to not feel like I'm in control of it, because that is a very heavy thing to carry whenever you do feel like it's only up to you.
Just to kind of go with that, it's kind of like this phrase I once heard, like this hope unattached to outcome. Like, we have these little rainbow babies, we have this hope, but it's like we can't necessarily control the outcome. We can just do what we can, but it's really up to God. And so that's sort of like the way that I kind of kept, like, saying that to myself, like, I have this hope, there's this like spark, there's this like hope in our family, but only God knows what the outcome is, you know, and I can only do what I can do, and I can just take it day by day.
Yeah, I can also relate so much. And like you were opening with Elizabeth, there's like this tension where it's so complex. We have gone through the worst thing a parent can go through, and we know that God showed up. Not that he made it easier, he made it light. It was still excruciating, but he really carried our families through like the worst of trials. So you'd think we would have this like super trust in God because he's really made that evident to us. But there's like the complexity of like, yes, in our spiritual life, I think we've probably grown leaps and bounds out of necessity because we've gone through this wasteland, as you say. But there is like this human component that has been so deeply affected, and just like on a human level, like our nervous system is dysregulated, and like there is this new anxiety and hypervigilance, and not to feel shame about that, because that doesn't indicate that we have like weak faith. That is just truly like the aftermath of the loss of a child. And I think any parent who's lost a child is going to experience that in their body and in their mind. And there's almost like this guilt, like, oh, I feel bad. I don't trust you more, God, because you really were so present through my daughter's life and death. And but it's just so painful living in a world where we know children can die. That's something I often say to like my lost friends or to my husband when I'm like sharing my grief, is like, I don't mean this to sound bad, but sometimes I feel like other people live in la la land. And when you've lost a child, it's like you live in a different world where in this world, like I know children can die. One of my children has died. And I know many people who have experienced this. So like, it's just like your eyes are opened in a new way. So that fear you're speaking of, Brittany, yes, I feel it so much too. And it's so hard to trust him because he's already allowed one of your children or more to leave. So it's like, how can I surrender? How can I feel that like I'm in good hands with you if you thought it was a good plan to let one of them join you? Like, I don't want that plan for anyone else. So like that temptation to grasp at them and like cling to them or try to control, I do struggle with. But you know, he's the king of the universe. He can protect them more than us. And like you're saying, Brittany, he truly loves them more than us, which is kind of like painful in a way, because I'm like, I love them so much. Is that not enough? But he does love them more, and he loves us, and he doesn't will the death of any of these little ones. Like he weeps with us, and he's the one who's going to console our broken hearts. So I have to kind of tell myself that he's not just like, let me
Right,
he is. Yeah. He is who he says he is.
Yeah.
And that's what I go back to so often.
Yeah, I heard that one of our the researchers that does sort of this like SUDC research said to me, you know, he cried first. Always like when I think of that, that brings me to tears. Like he knows how horrible this is, and this wasn't willed on it to us. It's just this terrible thing, and you know, he's there with us, crying with us.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like any of our living children that have had to have a painful procedure, not like a shot so much, but like something that's going to really be ongoing and hurting. And as parents standing by their bedside, like we cry with them. It's agony to know your child is about to be hurting. So I love that image of our Lord and Our Lady of Sorrows, like weeping because they know what's about to come. And Brittany, thank you for naming, like taking that kind of fear to confession, because it's not a sin, not at all. But to go to the place of healing, go to the sacraments, which are healing, and opening our heart to the Lord and just telling it like it is, so that, you know, the priest can fill us with the grace through our Lord in persona Christi. And we're having such a lovely conversation about our hearts. And then we have other people. We have other people's perceptions of what this experience is like, this complexity of thinking like, now you have your baby. Like you said earlier, both of you, Florencia and Maria, like this was maybe in some ways your ticket back into the land of the living. But can we talk a little bit about that complexity of falling in love with one while grieving the other, and also other people's expectations that they're not always reasonable about how long we should be grieving or how intensely. And I'm sure many people think that having a new baby is going to take away the grief for the child that died.
I really had to grapple with this a lot. So we lost Rosie May 21st, 2024. And we were kind of, you know, like I would say for 6 weeks, just really like unable to go to the grocery store, like unable to leave the house, that kind of thing. And then in July, we were kind of like, just sort of, we had gone away and we were just kind of talking, and we were like, let's just, see what happens kind of thing. Like, we were definitely not even close to like anything at that point in terms of our grief, but we were kind of just felt this calling of just being kind of open to life. And we found out in August that we were expecting Lucy. And I just remembered that in that moment, I felt and I feel very guilty about this. So that's why there's so much with guilt and fear and with rainbow babies, like, what are other people going to think? Like, that was sort of my first thought was, oh my gosh, people are going to think I didn't love, it's heavy. But I remember I talked to a priest about this, and also a grief expert. I was talking to a therapist, and they said, God only knows your truth. Like, you only know your truth. Like, you don't have to prove to anyone how much you love Rosie. And having another baby is, and I've talked to Maria about this. I read this somewhere that, having another baby is we're not replacing this child. It's in addition to, and just like every parenting, every single, us moms of multiple children, my parenting journey with Penny and my pregnancy with Penny is so different than George's and so different than Rosie's. And then my pregnancy and parenting Lucy and parenting them all together is so different. Like, that is the truth. Like, our parenting journey changes with every child. And so I really had to grapple with that first before. Like, I don't think I told people we were I think people could tell because it was my fourth pregnancy, and you just pop very, very quickly. And I remember when I went back to work, and I think it was around October, patients asking our front staff, is she pregnant? I was probably 5 months pregnant at that time. But I really had to grapple with that. I am not living. And I think because my husband and I are both physicians, we kind of have a little bit more of a, we have patience. And I almost felt like we were being we were in this little microscope. People were just kind of watching, how were we grieving, and what were we doing, and how were we doing, and through prayer and through talking to one of our grief therapists, this is first of all, just we don't have any power over death. We don't really have power over life in terms of the way that Lucy came, and she was very wanted, and she is not replacing Rosie. I just remember having to say these things to myself, and it doesn't matter what other people think. And Lucy was the best thing that happened to our family. I'm just so glad that we trusted God. I mean, it really comes down to trusting God and trusting his plan. And this was his plan, was to have a baby so soon after Rosie's death. And, fortunately, pregnancy is a very long journey. It's, 10 months. So we did have a lot more time to kind of grieve and get ourselves ready for Lucy. But I remember really grappling with that, and just what were other people going to think on top of everything we were already feeling. And then just the guilt of having another baby, and just, is Rosie disappointed in us? All of that. So it is very complex.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. That's really powerful. I hadn't really contemplated that part of it, that you yourself might think that other people think you're replacing her, right?
Yeah.
That part of the grief. Yeah. Thank you.
Or that we were over, that our grief for Rosie was over. And I mean, we all know it's still a part of us all the time. Rosie comes up all the time. So, and my prayer and my thoughts, my kids sometimes will ask about Rosie,
Yeah.
It really is. I don't remember per se how I felt about what other people thought. I think it was because how you had just mentioned, Florencia, maybe there was a little bit more time for y'all. And because we had found out for Annie so fast after losing Leo, that there wasn't, I guess, mentals, but I think I could only focus on having her. But then I was so afraid that it was impossible for me to love her. How could I love her? And I remember before I even knew it was her, I just was I remember being in a bath and reading a book, and the book finished, and I wasn't prepared to have quiet time in my brain. And then my brain demolished me, and I just started over and over and over again saying, my baby is in a box. My baby is in a box. How am I going to love this baby? My baby's in a box. And I couldn't even say the words out loud. And it was the first time, you know, in the months since we had found out we were pregnant for her, that all of those like emotions came rushing to the forefront.
Mhm.
And I remember it wasn't until like I actually said the words out loud, you know, to Sean, my husband, that I'm so afraid I'm not going to be able to love her. And then I could kind of encounter that in a different way. And it's just so comical because for Elizabeth and anybody who knows me that listens to this, like the ferocity with which I love Annie, you know, is just so interesting, you know, and I say all the time that I feel like she saved my life because had she not come here, I could very easily have imagined dying too, you
Yeah.
know, and so I'm very grateful for her presence. But it was like in those months of being pregnant with her, it was extraordinarily scary. But I really do feel it was in that pregnancy that I realized that grief and gratitude exist together. Like I
Mhm.
hadn't thought about that until that pregnancy. Like I thought you had to only be sad or you could only be happy. Like you can't do the two at the same time. And
Mhm.
in that pregnancy, like it really did help me realize that I can hold both of those emotions in the same time span, you know?
Thanks, Brittany. What about you, Maria?
Thank you for sharing that. This was definitely a huge pain point, and it still is. Comments from other people when your heart is just so broken and so tender. And during that pregnancy, I felt very vulnerable, like emotionally. And pregnancy is so visible, and people just want to make all these comments. So even like the innocent comments of like, "Oh, now you're gonna have two boys, two girls," even something like that, which wasn't at all like an ill intent, so hurtful because it just felt like everyone had forgotten. No, like we had another baby. She existed. She was part of our family. But definitely, I just tried to remind myself, like, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. I'm still really working through that. I mean, that's like a daily thing I'm trying to wrestle with, like to forgive people and to have humility that before I was in the child loss community, I wouldn't have known all the things I know now, you know? But it's definitely a big pain point still. I also like, maybe I made people feel awkward, but I would like gently say, this is our fifth, and we had another. I would gently educate them, like, child loss is a daily cross, and grief is lifelong, and I will always miss her. But I do introduce my kids with Mary, and it does make people uncomfortable at times, but it's important to me, and I want to live according to my own values and like set that example for my living kids that they can have the freedom to share about their sibling if they want to, and that I'm not like ashamed. So, I mean, I would definitely encourage listeners to like feel the freedom to share or not to share, whatever like feels right to them in any given moment, and that they can advocate on their behalf and for other lost moms and include all of their children on earth or in heaven, and they're always part of the family.
I love that, Maria. And I truly do. I feel like you never know what God can do, right? Our God never wastes anything. And I feel like in those moments, you never know what those people have experienced. You know, like there have been so many times where I've mentioned Leo because of that exact same thing. You know, Max doesn't have any living brothers. So it's very visible when we go to a grocery store, like, oh, Bud, all sisters, you know, kind of thing, very meaning well, you know, kind of thing, but it hurts him every single time. And he is a almost teenage boy, and it has been years since he has lost his brother, and it still hurts him, you know. And so there are times where I will speak up. There was been one specific time where it was whenever he was a lot younger, so it was a lot closer to when we lost Leo, but the person said something, you know, just a complete stranger in the grocery store, and Max said, "Oh, I have a brother, he's in heaven." And then he just walked away. So now I'm like, "Hi, sorry about that." But here's what you walked into, kind of helping them understand. But it really is, I think it's incredible how God can use that. And even if it's not for the person that maybe we're encountering, like you never know whose ears that's going to land on. You know, that another person who is maybe experiencing something that needs to hear those words of encouragement, you know, or whatever it may be. I have never ceased to be in awe of how God can use those moments just for like literal glory. out
Mm.
of the pit of hell. Like,
Yeah.
in the worst possible thing, our God shows up and says, "Boy, watch what I can do."
Yeah, it's almost, Brittany, like you're giving an opening. You're giving people almost like an invitation. And
And there's
Mhm.
so many lost moms, it gives them the freedom to share. You never know who you're speaking to. They may
yeah,
have experienced it. Well, we can like work to change the culture that this doesn't have to be taboo or hidden or in shame or in silence, that it's a
Yeah.
cross that deserves support and that we can be proud of our children. We don't have to hide them away. Like we love them. Like they deserve to be shared just like we do with our living children.
yeah, and live our faith, because I think a lot of us have said, I really did not, that question when I was pregnant, because it is so visible. Like you said, Maria, what number is this? How many children is this? Like,
Mhm.
what number baby is this? What pregnancy is this? And that was so hard that I tried everything. My two kids were there, and I'm like, I really just don't want to get into this right now, because I don't think I have the energy. I would do that, but I would feel dysregulated whenever I would say this is my third, because was clearly very much my fourth. And so I just had to kind of go back to like, this is my truth. This is our journey. This is like, God doesn't want us to hide this. This is not something to be hidden. And if they're asking me what number this is, like, I'm going to give them, like, I'm going to share what our truth is. I feel comfortable. I think some moms don't, depending on where you are in your grief journey, it might just also depend on the circumstance. Like maybe if it's a waitress that I won't ever see again, or I just need to get my food,
Yeah.
then maybe I
To
just
go
land on
order.
like the
Wrap it up.
visible, like I have three on earth,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I've chosen to do. So I'll just say that this is my third like earthly baby, or but I have one in heaven, or kind of depending on that. And I've had to practice that, because sometimes I just kind of like, in the beginning I would just freeze up a lot, and I like wouldn't know what to say, and I just feel like, yeah, I mean, Rosie's always with me, and like, to me, I feel like I'm speaking my truth, and I feel true to myself when I say I have 4 children.
As you do.
Florencia, I love that you shared that you just practice, because I felt so much of that in the beginning of, well, what do I say and how do I say? And for me too, a big thing was like the intentionality of people. Like, why you ask? Like, it's none of your business. I'm having a baby in my body. Go about your day. And so it was just really funny, because I actually do like talking to people. But then afterwards, I just really didn't want to talk to people. But what I really found interesting, and what I kind of through practice was, for me, it was a big thing with ages. So like, well, how many babies do you have? And I would say the number. Well, what are their ages? And it's like, oh my God, can you just be settled with the answer that I've already given you? I don't want to keep talking.
Right.
And so then I got in the practice in the way of saying the oldest and the youngest, because that's all they care about. They're trying to like mentally say, how many children did you have so close together? And so still to this day, I'll do that. We have 6 children. The oldest is 12, the youngest is 4. And that's it. And then they're satisfied with that. Because I would always I would say all of their ages, but then I would skip Leo, and then I felt bad about skipping him. And then they were like, well, wait. And it's like, oh my God, I'm just trying to pick out a watermelon.
I love that. I'm gonna start using.
I love.
Yeah.
My oldest is 7 and my youngest is 1. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And this is how many I have, and I feel like
Yeah.
that really did, like, that satisfied people. So that it's like only through practice and only through having the years to be able to say, like, okay, what do I say? How do I feel comfortable? When do I feel comfortable? Do I feel comfortable bringing it up in a complete scenario where I do not know this person? Because there has been so many beautiful moments with that. And I mean, so many literal lifelong friendships behind just that way that we got introduced, with them realizing that, we have Leo. And it's all about, like, for anyone listening as well, like, it's just your personal preference. Like, if on any given day, you don't say that number, and you don't, like, you feel like you just maybe don't have the strength to encounter that day, that's fine. Like, you don't have to push yourself and put yourself in a place where you are not at peace with whatever the answer is, because that's not what our God would want for you, and it's not what your baby would want for you. So whether or not you say the words out loud, they still exist. They still live. You still love them. They still love you. Like, that wrinkle in time is not going to change any of that, you know?
Any final thoughts? I'd love for each of you maybe to offer maybe one more word of encouragement, a word of support, a word of experience that we didn't touch on.
I would specifically say just grace. Like, if you're already pregnant and you feel like you're not ready, grace will provide. It has never let us down. If you feel like it's something that you're not ready for yet, but there's this yearning in your heart, remember the times that grace has showed up. Like, it saves you, you know, it always has, it always will. And for me, in the pregnancy of Annie, which I definitely was not prepared for, but overjoyed to encounter when we found out, something that I had to do a lot was really encounter my emotions. Like, I couldn't distract myself with them. I've talked about that before, how I would watch TV series that don't have to be discussed. But I would like distract myself from the emotions. And I didn't want to, you know, encounter them. And I just wanted to feel normal or whatever. And whenever I found out I was pregnant with Annie, I realized I had to feel the things and allow them to happen and not fight them off. And then allow joy to return and to not feel guilty when it does. Because once again, you can feel those two things at the same time. Just because you're joyful again or just because you're smiling again doesn't mean you're going to forget your child. But like, you can allow yourself to feel happiness on this side of heaven as well.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you.
I was thinking with being open, just trusting God's will, trusting God's timing, but also not feeling you need to rush into it. It's helpful to discern. Obviously, to be on the same page with your spouse is important. And to discern maybe with like a therapist or a spiritual director or other mothers of loss who can be real with you and walk you through it. And for those who are trying, I just wanted to share something my spiritual director sent me that was like so beautiful. She said, if the life you celebrate is not yet growing in your womb, it simply means the Lord first wanted to cultivate and birth in your heart a desire and readiness for this next exciting chapter. He's incredibly generous to those he deeply cares for and loves. So that was so beautiful that even in the waiting and in the healing and in the lead up, like he's doing all of this hidden work. So to trust in his timing. And like you said, there's so much grace, Brittany, because I really felt we wanted a baby so desperately after Mary died, but it felt like impossible. All I could think of was like a million obstacles and fears and human and practical, just so many things that would be so hard. But like he made a way, like he made something that felt impossible possible. It was not easy at all. It was very difficult, but like he did give me tremendous grace and he still is. So it's easy to focus on the negatives, but the Lord will equip you if he calls you to that next chapter. And like the joy that the new baby brings like outweighs the suffering and the sorrow of it, I think. And I think also just to be very gentle with yourself. Like when Ellie was born, I kept telling myself like this is not a normal postpartum. Like don't compare yourself to anyone else. It was very different than with my first 3 living kids because I wasn't traumatized then. You know, so I had to like tell myself like this is going to be a bigger adjustment. There's like a lot of trauma, there's a lot of grief, there are a lot of big feelings that are being awakened. So just to like ride that out, have like patience with myself and care for myself in it. I think that's important too. And just to really like share with other moms who've been through it because they're the only ones who can understand and really like see you on a deeper level besides Jesus. Like he sees us and he knows us, but it helps to share those burdens.
Thank you.
I would say my take home is just sort of following through prayer. Everyone's going to have a different timeline. And as you can hear from all of our stories are similar, but also a little different. And just, you know, with your spouse and, you know, through prayer and through grace, just your timeline is going to look a little bit different. And your needs are going to be a little bit different than anyone else's. And then I really do love the dual process grief where you can feel, like Brittany talked about, 2 emotions at the same time. You can feel joy and sadness. You can feel anger and, you know, exuberance. You can feel, you know, all of these emotions at the same time. And that was very helpful when I read about that, you know, I would feel like this tremendous joy when I would see Lucy take her first laugh, but then I was like, but Rosie, and I was like, there's nothing wrong here. This is normal for me to feel both of these things at the same time because I love both of these children just as much.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, and I want to just name the reality, and we're going to talk about this on a different podcast, but a rainbow baby is not everyone's reality. Many people don't have the luxury of just sort of like deciding, am I open, am I not open? I mean, infertility, secondary infertility, children that die much older. Like I was 45 when we lost John Paul. I mean, could have I rolled the dice again? And maybe I was not ready for that. So if you're listening to this and a rainbow is not in your forecast, then we understand that's another kind of suffering. So thank you so much to each of you, Florencia, Maria, Brittany. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. And we're going to close with It's Not for Nothing, the part of the episode where each one of us just shares briefly what is holding us up in our grief, or a little knot that needs to be untied.
I'll start. So I feel like the knot for me that needs to be untied, all of my kiddos are going to be in a new school this year, and that comes with some trepidation. So it's a little bit of, okay, I was in this like safe little bubble where every single person knew my children, and that's being removed. Praying that our God absolutely helps me, as I know He will, navigate those emotions when they come.
For us this summer with Lucy, she is 15 months. And so she's getting close to sort of that age that we lost Rosie. So I know that these next couple of months are going to be, a little bit hard for us. So
Yeah.
keep us in your prayers.
For sure. Yes, that is definitely a very delicate knot as she approaches that age.
For me, my knot that I'm holding on to is definitely like snuggling with Ellie. Just has been so healing for my body and for my mind and for my soul and for my emotions. Like it's just been very healing, and having the kids home at summer, seeing them playing with her has been like a true joy. And there are days where I'm just really in the muck of grief and feel like super crushed and like I can't go on, where it's just really, really overpowering. But I do like pinch myself and I'm like, Ellie's here, and that really just like shows God's faithfulness to me. She's so prayed for and so longed for, and it doesn't take away any of this mess. Like as you say, like the wasteland of grief and like all these million pieces to put back together. I'm still in the thick of that, but it is a huge comfort and consolation to physically have her here and to hold her, a tangible reminder of God's goodness, because there are times where we can question it in our grief, but to be like, okay, Lord, you are a good Father. You care for our family. You're with us. In spite of all this mess swirling around me, it just gives me hope for the future.
It's beautiful. So we have a whole gaggle of grandchildren, and my daughter Maggie's oldest is 3.5, Cashin, and she sent me this text this morning. She put it in the family group chat, and she said, after a conversational struggle over the necessity of the seatbelt due to my job as a mother to prevent as best I can early death, Cashin says from the back seat, John Paul Raphael died even earlier than Mufasa did. And what I love about this and why it's like bringing me joy, my grandchildren like are my snuggle joy, just this incredible gift of all of these little babies all so close together. But like my 3.5-year-old grandson could just toss off his uncle that he's never going to meet on this side of heaven, just toss off his name and kind of reflect about he's dead, but so is Mufasa. And it's just part of his lexicon. And that just brought me a lot of joy. And our little baby is alive in our family, even
so
if he's
loved.
Alive. So loved. So loved. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to each of you. Thank you to our listeners. I know this has been a longer conversation, but we've had so much expertise, so many stories and hearts to hear from, and a lot to cover. So thank you for being here with us. And we pray that this conversation blesses you. God bless you all. And Our Lady and Tire of Knots, pray for us. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. For more information on Redbird Ministries, visit www.redbird.love. That's LOVE. Or join our free virtual community on the Redbird app. Hope to see you there.